Hey, welcome to another episode of the Contractor Business Builder podcast. We have the honor of talking with Adam Eagle. He is the founder and CEO at Beam, which we'll be learning all about how they help contractors with the whole financial side of their business. How are you doing today, Adam?
I am doing well. West Coast, early morning, nice weather, small amount of rain, but
Yeah,
beautiful.
nice. That's awesome. Good to hear that. And yeah, West Coast as well. Love the area, and it's nice when you get all that sunshine for sure. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got started with Beam?
Yeah, thanks, Derek. So I came from the world of technology, I guess you could say. My specifically financial technology, helping companies, mostly online businesses, with payments and financial management and accounting. But I always wanted to work on something a little bit more hands-on. And growing up, I always wanted to be an architect. And my best friend from childhood actually became an architect, lives in San Francisco, and I started chatting with him, and he told me about all of the challenges in his industry around finances, essentially. And he mentioned that a lot of the builders they work with, they're building these beautiful, amazing homes, amazing craft and design, but then their back office was pretty messy, and it was pretty hard to understand the finances behind the project. Invoices were coming late, bills were being paid late. And that kind of got me thinking. And so after about 7 years working at a company called Stripe, which did financial technology software, I decided to go start Beam and help construction businesses with a similar type of problem. Because I didn't come from the world of construction, I really had to find folks who were contractors who could really give me insight into what was going on. And so my friend, he introduced me to a couple of those contractors. I started meeting with them, sitting in their offices, watching them use QuickBooks, watching them use spreadsheets, watching them hand paper checks to their subs. And that's where we kind of developed the idea for Beam. And we quickly kind of grew a small team of folks. And from there, it was off to the races.
Yeah, the construction industry has been better because of it ever since. You painted a common picture there, I think, where, a lot of contractors, they're great at what they do. They build amazing, homes or do great work, but that often doesn't translate into the back office and admin stuff. And a lot of contractors just kind of want that stuff to be handled and taken care of and not have to worry about it. So that's where Beam comes in. So the $1 million question is how does Beam make contractors' lives easier?
So there's a couple different kinds of contractors out there. There's the type that wants to do everything themselves. They are going in and creating spreadsheets, creating documents, sending out invoices, managing all of their payments. They're the folks that want to outsource it or give it to someone else, delegate it, and they just hand it off to someone in the back office. There are other folks who kind of ignore it completely and frankly aren't doing much there, and that really can slow down their business and their growth. But even for those first two, what we found was a contractor trying to do it themselves. They didn't have good tools to actually manage project finances. They were gluing together QuickBooks and spreadsheets and other systems, and it led to a ton of wasted time. I mean, countless contractors saying they would be up until 11 p.m. and then have to wake up at 5 a.m., for a job the next morning towards the end of the month or on a certain day of the week because they were behind on expense management or billing or something like that. And then the second category, the folks that try to hand it off, a lot of times what happens is they kind of silo that work to someone in the office. And that person in the office might not have the right tools either. And they're not really able to collaborate with the rest of the team. And so they're trying to just push the problem somewhere else rather than collaborate and really understand their numbers. And so for that second category of contractor, what we're trying to do is build a tool that both their bookkeeper or their office manager and themselves as the business owner can use and collaborate on to both save them time and give them better, insight into their project. So maybe stepping back 10,000 feet, what our system covers is anything from estimating, invoicing, bill payment, job costing, expense management, the actual payments. So, collecting payment from your client, paying a subcontractor, all the way to compliance management. If you need to collect lien waivers or certificates of insurance, anything that touches money for your business, we help with. We don't do payroll, but outside of that, anything that touches money, we're going to help you with, and we're going to help bring organization to the chaos.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely like having all of that in one place and having it all work together is a big step forward for a lot of contractors. I remember when I started my first, subcontracting company, we were doing framing, and yeah, I learned how to do QuickBooks and invoicing and went through the struggles. I was the do-it-yourself guy when I started, and I was able to get it done, but definitely not as effectively. And like looking back now with knowing how financials should run and the whole process and having proper cadence for invoicing and tracking expenses and everything, there's definitely a lot more that goes into it than I think a lot of people realize to be able to run business effectively and have all the information that's needed and just have a really healthy, financially sound business. A lot of the time, there's just even these like kind of gray areas where unless you've worked in a larger business and seen that side of a business, or actually taken like financial management courses, stuff like that, you don't really even understand all the pieces and how they fit together. One thing with talking about expense tracking and I call it the holy grail of contracting is job costing, because if you can do it properly, you can kind of stay alive forever because you know where your money's going, which
Yeah.
as many people know, you can get to an end of a job and wonder, why isn't there money in my bank account? Or maybe at the end of the year, on paper, it says you made money, but it's all kind of evaporated. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about, what job costing looks like and how they can do proper job and expense tracking through Beam?
Yeah. So, we've met a lot of contractors who, because job costing is this scary thing, it seems like a lot of work. They basically look at their business and they say, do I have more or less money in my bank account at the end of the month? And the reality is, like, that is not a bulletproof way to run your business. There are a lot of ways that you can manipulate that and think that you're making money when you're not, because a lot of these payments are operating on credit, right? You might pay your subcontractor a couple weeks after the work is completed. You might invoice a little bit in advance, things like this. You're really not getting a clear picture of, are you making money or are you losing money? And where are you making money and where are you losing money on a job? So, the first thing is just understanding your expenses and what ties to what job. If you can at a high level understand how much should I spend on this job and how much should I earn on this job, that gives you kind of the most basic numbers, kind of a gross profit figure. You then need to take into account overhead and things like this to really understand, well, am I actually beating my overhead and am I actually making money at the end of the year? And then the thing that we encourage people to do beyond just categorizing to a project is also categorizing to codes, cost codes, accounting codes, however you want to call them. So if I'm a general contractor, I might have work across, 17 different trades, for example, and I might have certain finished materials that I'm purchasing and things like that. Now, if I'm building a detailed estimate at the beginning of the job, and then I'm building detailed change orders throughout the job, I, in a sense, have my own budget for this project. Everything prior to markup or margin is the budget for the project. So if I put together an estimate, it's $100,000 of my expenses and $130,000 to the client. I want to make sure that at the end of the job, I'm actually spending $100,000 on that job, not 110. Now, in reality, contractors almost always go a little bit over budget. It's very rare for contractors to go under budget, but a lot of times they don't know that. So what our system does is it allows you to easily take that estimate that you've created, convert that to a budget. You can either just do that at a high level, right? For that given project, I want to spend 100,000, or you could do it at the cost code level. I want to spend 15,000 on finished materials, 12,000 on plumbing, et cetera. And then as you are paying bills, as you are swiping your credit card, you can associate each and every one of those with a project and a code. Sometimes you actually want to spread it across projects and codes, and we support that too. And then at the end of the day, you get this very clear snapshot of, for this project, how much have I spent? How does that compare with my budget? How much am I over or under budget? How much have I committed, maybe via subcontract or via a purchase order, versus how much do I have remaining? And so once you can see that, you can really start to see, wow, I'm making a lot of money on plumbing on each of these jobs, but I'm losing a lot of money on finished materials. Clearly, I'm pricing incorrectly. And what that allows you to do is, for your next project, adjust your pricing so that you are more accurate and you're making more money on every single job.
Yeah, it's really the feedback loop is the big benefit and the reporting side of it because, like you said, if some things are going over, some things are going under, you can be more competitive with your bids because like these are going to be my true costs, as well as it can save your ass in the end because maybe you've been going over on demo or framing or something for the past year, but because you haven't been doing any job costing, you might have a general idea like, yeah, my guys always seem to go over, or it's this sub trade always seems to add extra stuff to the scope of or what have you, but you don't really know is that $500 or is that $5,000 on a project. So it really gives you those insights for sure. So I mean, contractors, they're busy, they're out there, we're doing project management and everything else that goes along with the business. Often they're going to have an admin or maybe thinking about hiring an admin, or maybe for now it's the wife or the daughter or the son or somebody else helping out with some of the admin or book stuff. How do you suggest contractors would like work with a team essentially, or have someone else put in some of this information? Because it can be time consuming to track everything. Like obviously Beam is going to help a lot with that, but at the end of the day, there are going to be certain inputs and categorization that needs to be done by
Yeah.
someone who knows what's kind of going on in the business. So what have you seen work well with having like an admin person or a bookkeeper handling some of this stuff? And how does Beam work with like if there's a team of different people that are all
Yeah.
using it?
Yeah, so a lot of times, if you look at sort of pen and paper process, you'll see systems that people put in place to build this collaboration between, say, an office manager and an owner. You'll see things like two stacks of paper on a desk, where one stack is unapproved bills, they haven't been coded yet. The other stack are approved coded bills. And these analog ways of doing things, we actually wanted to emulate and make these more efficient in our software. And so, for example, if you have an office manager, that office manager might be able to enter information about the bill, what they see on the paper, but maybe only you are able to approve it and assign these cost codes. And so the system allows you to run those workflows where you can add a bill, you don't necessarily have codes yet, but then someone else can go in, code it, approve it, schedule a bill payment. What I recommend is, building a standard operating procedure. That's really the most important thing. It almost doesn't matter as much what your standard operating procedure is, as long as you have one. And so rather than saying, okay, well, sometimes Lisa's taking it, sometimes Austin's taking it, sometimes I'm taking it, in which case you actually don't know who's in charge of things.
Yeah.
Setting that
Mhm.
standard operating procedure, this person's responsible for processing bills, putting them into the system. This person's responsible for approving them, coding them, scheduling payment is really important. Now, I'll give you an example on the expense management side. If you have 5 teammates that all have credit cards because they need to make the occasional purchase at Home Depot or, your local hardware store, you can give them all cards and ask them to code all of their expenses inside of Beam. And what that does is, they get a Beam card, they swipe that card, and then about 10 seconds later, they get a text message asking them to categorize that expense. And so now what you're doing is you're establishing an automatic procedure that allows you to collect that information instead of relying on the goodwill of the employee keeping the receipt,
Yeah.
going to the office, handing it to the right person and getting it
Mhm.
coded. So yeah, I mean, at a high level, establish a standard operating procedure, have clear ownership, use tools that enable kind of digitalization of that workflow so that it's not as inefficient as literally having stacks of paper, and rely on the fact that, we now have internet on our phones all the time. Not
Yeah,
all the time, but most of the time. So
pretty much.
don't
Yep.
wait until you get into the office to approve the invoice necessarily. If you're, sitting in your truck at the job site, you can take your phone out and you can review the work that's, pending
Mhm.
on a job. And you
Yeah.
can approve invoices and code them and things like that from your phone on a system like Beam or others.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I remember, talking previously how you mentioned, you sort of you created Beam because there really wasn't any great financial software that really helped contractors with, this part of managing their admin and financial tasks. So that makes a lot of sense. And having your field guys or your project manager being able to categorize costs and approve costs, I think is a big step forward because any contractor that's tried to set that process up with an admin person, often the wall that they run into is that admin person doesn't really know the right cost codes and they don't have the information from site of like, okay, he bought some, I don't know, some 2x4s or some, construction adhesive or whatever, but is that for demo? Is that for framing? Like they often don't really know what's going
Yeah.
on site or the specific project. So having your field crew or project manager being able to categorize expenses is definitely makes it just a lot easier for everybody and
Yeah.
just a lot more less headaches, I guess. So with running the financial side of things or using Beam, what are some common mistakes that you see contractors making with their financial management or using the software? What have you
Yeah.
seen or what do you see kind of repetitively?
Good question. There are a bunch of small things that I've seen and some big ones. I'll focus on some of the big ones that I've noticed. One is inconsistency with invoicing. Folks might not have a common frequency that they invoice. They might invoice late or they might, delay their invoicing. And so, it's really important to choose the right invoicing methodology for the job. If you have a small, simple job, invoicing by milestone might make the most sense because there are clear milestones that you can clearly communicate to the homeowner, and those milestones might be pretty frequent. I mean, they might be every week or two. But if you're doing a very large job that might have a lot of changes, relying on milestones might not be the right methodology because you might have to wait a long time between milestones. And so being able to invoice by progress, percent completion, be able to invoice for things like potentially materials purchased, depending on what state you're in, is really important. And the other thing we've seen with invoicing is not setting the right expectations on payment. And so you might send an invoice and you might say, okay, yeah, hand me a check next time I'm at the job site, which could be a week from today, right? And when that happens, you end up with this big accounts receivable, and you need that money to pay your subs and to purchase materials. And so what we encourage is, invoice early, invoice often. Don't invoice truly early. Overbilling is actually bad because when you overbill at the beginning of the job, you're going to underbill at the end of the job by definition. So don't overbill, but invoice promptly, invoice often, maybe biweekly or once a month or upon hitting a milestone, and accept payment and establish an expectation that payment is due upon receipt. Quickly take a look at the invoice, make sure it's correct, make sure the work that we've done is correct, but you shouldn't be paying us 2 weeks from now. So there's the invoicing side. I think change orders is another big area for potential harm because at the end of the day, change orders happen on almost every project. When you look at the average margins in the construction industry, especially for general contractors, you're talking about tens in sort of net margin, tens of percent. And sometimes change orders can equate to that entire margin. And so if you miss invoicing for a change order or you misprice a change order, or there's some sort of debate with your customer on that change order, that can wipe away a huge portion of your margin. And so my recommendation is the second you talk about a change with your customer, create that change order request, understand what the scope is, start to price it out, send it to the customer as soon as possible, not on a WhatsApp or text message, not on a voice call, but actually in a system like Beam or over email. Get that documented and get approval and get signature as soon as you can so that you're not risking, forgetting to get approval and then having to forfeit that money. So that's another really big one is just around change order management. The other one that we see is going back to job costing. Contractors that don't really understand how much they're making or losing on a job. So, at the most basic level, contractors who might be taking from one job to pay another job, and they don't realize that they're losing money on one job and their margin is lower than they think. And so doing job costing is very, very important. Obviously kind of a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need to be able to send invoices promptly. You need to be able to pay bills promptly. And once you've got that out of the way, you need to be able to cost code and categorize everything so that you really understand profitability. But you're kind of building on that and to a point where at the very top, you can start to delegate these things very effectively. And so then as the business owner, you're not in the day-to-day of every single part of the financial management. You're delegating responsibilities once you have a system in place.
Yeah, definitely three big keys there to running a successful business financially. And invoicing is so critically important, but I think something not a lot of contractors give a whole lot of thought to. It's sort of like when I need money, I invoice, and otherwise, I will get to it eventually. And setting those expectations with clients up front is very important. Obviously, having it in the contract, but generally speaking, if you are doing milestones, you're going to want to have quite a few different milestones, even if you you end up not invoicing for each milestone, but at least you've got that option and you haven't kind of shot yourself in the foot where, you've taken a very large sum up front or at some point to, you've reached a certain phase of the project and then you've got, like weeks or months before the next milestone and now you're kind of running on fumes as far as cash flow goes because you haven't quite reached that next milestone, but you've sort of, spent a lot of money on trades and materials and what have you. So
Great point. Yeah.
definitely you want to keep your options open so that you're able to invoice, yeah, on a percentage basis, or at least have a lot of milestones close together so that you have that option to initiate cash flow as you need. And then, yeah, on the change order front there too, super important. It's always a can be a gray area. It shouldn't really be, but yeah, what you said about making sure that you're actually doing a proper estimate for a change order, I think is really important because I've done this so many times and it's sometimes it works out, but usually it doesn't, where you're just like, yeah, that'll be an extra $1,000 or that'll be extra 25. You do some, back of the napkin math, and then later you realize, well, no, this is going to add, 2 days to the scope of work. This is going to add extra project management or extra overhead, forgot this material or that. So actually taking the time to like, what is this change order actually going to take? And whenever you change a scope of work and change a schedule, it always kind of affects the things around it. So there's like additional kind of costs
Yeah.
involved that go
Yeah,
ahead.
one other thing to add there, Derek, is to that point, if you don't put together that estimate and you write out the scope, you may actually not see eye to eye with what the change is with the homeowner. And so a lot of times you're seeing secondary change orders and disputes arise because, when you're talking on the job site, you might not fully understand what change they actually want. But if you write it out and you spell it out in detail like you would in your original estimate, you send it to the homeowner, they might identify where you maybe missed something, and maybe
Yeah.
they wanted a different kind of wood or they wanted
Mhm.
different dimensions or different finishes, whatever it may be. Writing it out and pricing it out, I think, is a really important exercise.
Yeah, and it shows you as like a professional as well as sometimes clients. It's like you're going to charge me an extra $2,000 for this, but it's like it's just put a hole in the wall and nail some boards up, and they may not realize that well it's going to involve these materials. We have to repatch it. We have to get the drywall in here. We got to get the carpenter in here. We've got to run some electrical. So I think having a bit of a detailed scope of work, it'll show the client that there is actually more to it than, just a quick 2 hour fix or what have you. So lots of good reasons to do have a proper change order process, essentially. What's some of the best advice that you've ever received? Could be to do with financials or business or even just life, but what's some good advice that you've been given, and how did you use it? How
Yeah,
did you
good
use the
question.
knowledge?
I'll do a business one, and I'll have to think how much this applies to the world of construction. This, I think, very much applies to the world of technology, and it's that your customers are the experts on their problems and you are the expert in the solution. I actually think this does apply to construction. A homeowner might say, yeah, my faucet's leaking, or I'm having this problem with this door not closing. And yeah, they might suggest a fix, but it's your job. You're the professional. You're going to look at it and say, no, actually, this is how we're going to approach this problem. The same thing is true for technology, and this is how we approach building Beam. I might sound somewhat knowledgeable on construction finance, but I don't pretend to be an expert in construction. And I don't trust my own view of what contractors' problems are. I validate those with our customers. And so I work really closely, and the whole team does, with our customers to understand what are your problems. When you are producing a change order, how are you doing that? When you're trying to understand your job profitability, how are you doing that? And only from that do we then go and propose a solution. And we don't necessarily always take the solution that our customers have in mind, because maybe their solution is the way that they've been doing it for 20 years on paper, but it doesn't make as much sense on a computer. And so again, they're the experts on their problems. We have to become the experts on the solution. And so we, do the hard work. We sit in front of a whiteboard, we do research, we come up with proposed solution, we show it to them, we get their feedback, and then over this iterative process, we end up with a really great product in the end, which we then deliver to them. So I think you could do the same thing, take that same advice in construction as well.
Yeah, I think it applies to most any business. I took like a design thinking as part of a group, anyways. That they did a design thinking sort of workshop, and then they also translated that into some. It was an event, like a public event, to help professionals in the area and stuff like that. But anyways, the key takeaway that I got out of it was part of that process is really just understanding the problem and asking yourself, are we actually solving the right problem? And spending some time there because I'm very used to if there's a problem, it's like I have a solution and I go like head first, into the solution without sometimes, understanding is this actually the right problem to solve, or am I actually listening to a client and addressing the problem that they have, or if I just thought I understood and then started creating solutions and kind of jump into solution mindset without actually understanding the client and their problems. So very
Yeah.
key distinction there. And sometimes you have to kind of take a second just to take a little bit of time and just make sure that you're actually hearing the client and solving the actual problem that they have, and not just presenting solutions that you think are right, but because when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail kind of approach that can work. But whoever understands the client best is generally going to provide the best solution, and also sort of win, if you will. Like it goes with marketing, it goes with client, services, and providing a solution. Is when you really know your client the best, your company is going to stand out heads over tails for over any other company. Getting back to Beam, with any new software, I see it across the board. Contractors, they get some new software, they're really excited. This is going to solve all my problems, right? And then comes the implementation, and they kind of get into it. They're busy. Maybe they start using a few of the features, and then it kind of goes on the shelf. And 3 months, 6 months pass by, and there's maybe using parts of it, but haven't really utilized the software effectively or to the full capabilities. What is your process or suggestion for business owners to utilize software and implement, a software solution into their company?
Yeah, it's funny because the beginning of that sounds great, right? Because when you are trying, adopting new software, it shouldn't be an all or nothing thing. You don't want to jump in head first and try to switch everything around all at once. You do want to start, and do it kind of iteratively, start one place and start to expand. I think where things start to break down is, let's say to use Beam as an example, you start using the estimating tool, you get some estimates approved, and then you go back to your old habits of invoicing somewhere else and invoicing manually. It's about kind of continuing on that plan and having that continuous build up. And so the way that we normally recommend it is we say, okay, you're going to choose an upcoming project. This doesn't always work, but assuming you have an upcoming project, you're going to take that upcoming project and you're going to do it end to end on Beam. You don't have to move all of your other projects over yet, but you're going to start on this one project. And so send out the estimate for this project, get it approved. Hopefully it gets approved.
Yeah.
Or maybe you already got the estimate approved, in which case let's import it into Beam. Now let's create the first invoice, get the deposit, send that out. Oh, you had, your demo sub came. Okay, let's pay the demo sub. Let's start handing out credit cards to your team and have them start managing expenses through that system. And you really focus on getting that one project successful. And then once they do get that one project successful, you say, okay, well, here's the plan to expand this to your other projects. Sometimes, it doesn't make sense to take a project that's 80% done and move it over. So sometimes you just focus on the projects in the earlier stages and you start to continue to build on that. Now, what we do internally is we have dashboards that help us view for each customer how they are adopting the system. We have an understanding of what they want to use in the end. Not everyone wants to use every feature, and that's okay. But if they want to use these 3 features, 2 months in, how many features are they using? And we'll reach out and we'll try to schedule time and help them with training and onboarding. It's a pretty white glove situation. If you're on our plus or our scale tiers, which are our tiers that come with more white glove customer support and onboarding, we'll schedule times with you, regular times, and we'll help you through any issues you might run into or just any training for your team. If you're on our core tier, which is our free tier, we will still help you out. We might not be as aggressive in scheduling times, but if you reach out to us, we'll schedule time with you and help you get set up. We're really invested in your success as much as you are. So, we want to make sure that our contractors are successful on the platform. And that means continuously adding kind of more and more of their function into Beam.
Yeah, no, well said for sure. And great process what you mentioned. You want to start in steps and kind of get one thing working and then the next thing, and often in a chronological order of like, how a project runs is the way to do it. And that's how I work with clients quite a bit is there's like your whole business. We've got all these different systems and processes and things like that. And if we try to like do a bit here and a bit there, it just becomes overwhelming and chaotic. It's better to kind of start small with like, let's talk about, like estimating. Let's figure that out and make a bit of a process. And then from there you can add on the next thing, which is maybe sending a proposal and maybe sending the first invoice or what have you. So kind of work on one thing, get that down, and then move on to the next one instead of trying to sort of do everything at once. Is definitely
Yeah.
a better way to reach success and a lot less headaches and things like that with trying to figure out everything new right away for sure. Can you walk us through like a success story of a client who started using Beam and how you worked with them and some of the benefits and the outcomes that they got?
Yeah. So I'll talk about a contractor that started using Beam earlier this year. That is a pretty cool story. His name's Alex. He's based in the Northeast. And I remember he came to us and he said, normally if anything says technology or software or application, I will not touch it. Like I don't want software. I want a solution to my problems. But something about our message, we partner with a company called BuildZoom, and BuildZoom reached out to this contractor. He's one of the top contractors on BuildZoom, and he liked this message. He saw the card, he saw the financial system, and he said, well, this would actually make my life a lot better. But now the challenge is, okay, how do we get someone who's maybe a little technology hesitant to start using different parts of the tool and onboard many projects? He's running, a dozen projects at a time and be successful and get his whole team to be successful. And so we worked closely with him and we set things up, and, that white glove service that we did was really successful. And so fast forward now 7-8 months, he does all of his estimating, all of his invoicing, his bill payment, and his expense management on Beam. All of his time entries get imported into Beam. So for every project, he's seeing his, P&L very nicely. And, what he's actually doing is, because our system does payment processing, it does expense management, all of these things, we're able to actually give him money back. So he actually is making more money from our system than he is paying, which is pretty amazing. He stores funds in the Beam balance, which is an embedded bank account. His card gets 1% cash back everywhere he shops. And in turn, he's actually making many thousands of dollars just from our kind of financial technology. And then if you think about how much more he's making because he's tracking his finances more closely, it's probably in the tens of thousands. So, I remember he reached out to me at some point a couple months in, was super appreciative and said, this is changing my business and changing my life. And, it's less chaotic. Things are more organized and I'm just making more money. So I thought that was really awesome because it came from someone who was more hesitant. It wasn't the young tech savvy person who really wanted to try out a new software, or someone who actually despised trying out new software, but it worked for him and he was so happy about that.
Great to hear that. Terrific story. And like you said, amazing that someone who's a little hesitant to use technology or get a system like Beam was actually took that step forward and realized that it could be a big benefit and then, turned out excellent for them. So for our listeners out there who want to try out Beam and see what it can do, what's the best way for them to get, set up with Beam or to connect with the team at Beam?
Yeah, so our website, trybeam.com, trybeam.com, is the best place. You'll see a little chat box. You'll see phone number, email address to contact us. You can directly sign up and get started on that free tier and just get familiar with the system. You can connect it to QuickBooks and we'll do a two-way sync, and you can start to kind of get a feel for the system. My recommendation is always schedule some time with the team because they're experts. A lot of them come from the world of construction or construction technology and have helped literally, many dozens of contractors start using the system. And so, set up a time with them and, we can show you more of the product or show you more details. But yeah, you can get started today and just start sending out estimates and tracking them more carefully, or sending out invoices and collecting online payment, or moving to an online bill payment solution with your subcontractors. There's 100 different ways to use the platform, which is really cool. And it all kind of works together very nicely. If you want to also reach out to me, I think in the show notes there'll be linked to my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and, we can schedule some time as well. Would love to help out any business that's motivated to go and improve their financial management. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll put those links in the description of the video. So go check those out. Go check out Beam. Like you said, it's got an excellent free tier to get started and a bunch of powerful tools there for contractors. So no reason not to go check it out right now. Any final words of wisdom or final thoughts on Beam that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, this is something that became clear a couple months into starting Beam is we get to work with some of the most talented people. They're able to build the most beautiful spaces, and the craft level is amazing. And it's a shame that a lot of builders don't take that same mentality and apply it to their back office and to their business in general. And so you have these people that are very, very hardworking, waking up early, going to bed late. They're providing jobs to their family and friends and supporting the community and building more houses and everything that's so important. But they kind of let the business go by the wayside, or their finances go by the wayside, sometimes personally suffering because of it. And so, the one message I'll send is the same detail and attention that you put to your jobs and to the finishes and all those details, you should take that same approach to your back office and to your finances. Because if you do, you're going to be able to grow your business. You're going to be able to hire more employees. You're going to be able to renovate more folks' homes, build more homes, whatever it is you're doing, have a bigger impact. And I think that's really important.
Well said. Fantastic analogy of, build your business with the same care and craftsmanship that you would build, one of your high-end, custom homes or work for your best clients. So well put. Want to thank you so much for coming on here, Adam. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and telling us all about Beam.
Thank you, Derek.